Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to Vilnius. It's the second time I'm here. Last time was in the jury for the Congress Center, and the city is growing on me. It's fantastic. So I'm quite happy, and as you said, I'm a founder of Juul Architects in Copenhagen. We are a cross-disciplinary studio working with urban design, landscape, architecture, a lot of housing. And on top of that, I'm also president in INTA, which is an international association of urban development, which actually have a broad global purpose of discussing and qualifying the debate about urban design and planning in total. I'm talking about sustainability from another perspective, from the social side, and maybe as I didn't understand a word of the last presentation, I might come in quite differently. But I think, from my perspective, health first is the new design parameter. Paradigm. It's really important that we, in a situation, also include the social purpose, the social approach to how we are planning our cities, our neighborhoods, our housing areas, and our public spaces, so that we are not forgetting the quality of life of the people we are planning for. And I think that's actually the basic sustainable message I'd like to address. Yeah, 2 words about our office. As I said, it's both landscape, it's architecture, it's planners, and 2 seconds. And we have a research and development department. And what I'm going to address today is actually a research project that actually have been applied to our own projects, so that the evidence-based way of dealing with architecture and planning is also all the time discussing, different scales. We are working in both the urban scale, in the neighborhood scale, but also very much at universities, housing scale, but also about public spaces. And what I'm going to talk about today is actually urban health culture of the future. I think, to me, it's very important to talk about the major agendas in society. We cannot address all of them all the time, but we can actually figure out they are actually having an internal belonging. So when we are talking about health, it's also about climate challenges. We are talking about urbanization. It has a lot of impact on the way we are planning, and also about the health. Mobility, which I've been discussing very much here in Vilnius, it's also a question of inviting people to a new way of using the streets, biking, walking, etc. And I think it takes a long time to drive 4 kilometers from the airport to here, and it shouldn't be like that. So someone have to do something about it. Demographic changes, I think all societies are actually addressing that, because we're getting older and older, but actually we have to think about our welfare system. So my message today is actually to talk about how we can be proactively thinking health into a situation where we are proactive in including that into the planning phase and the planning process, instead of using our hospitals to take all the consequences. So we did, 2 years ago, we promoted tools to promote social, physical, mental, and social health in the built environment. It's a toolbox, and that's what I'm going to tell you about, but it's also a working tool to make sure that we can actually apply and address the major issues in mental, social, and physical needs, how it has an impact on the way we are planning, and then measure the effect of the results. And I think all the time to go back and figure out what we did it work, is also quite measured to the environment, that we take the world seriously. I have to find out where to go. So my question is, how do we create an urban mindset about health, and how do we integrate and work with health and well-being in the urban environment? What added value does promoting well-being create for the city, the students, the citizens, the municipalities? I think it's crazy that we're actually talking about sustainability and decarbonization and everything in that field without including the human being as a part of that process. We are creating the world for people, for inhabitants, for citizens. So the well-being of those we are planning for is very important to address. So actually, to start with this project, I started with a think tank. And I think the cross-disciplinary approach is very important for us because that's where we have the chance to be a little more innovative. Doctors, researchers, municipalities, architects, and sociologists. And I think the discussion about trying to figure out how we actually are, I don't know if this is working, all the time coming from the city down to the neighborhood, to the urban spaces, through cases, and then thinking about that actually through these cases withdraw the essence of these cases to create that toolbox which has been the idea. This is a publication which can be linked, it can be taken down from our website in English. And I think the basic discussion of why should we do this is because all societies, even Lithuania, but also Poland and Germany and especially Denmark, we have more than 50% of obesity. People what's called, they are actually talking about obesity as something which is the individual responsibility, but I think this is also a question of how we actually design our environments. We have more than 12% that suffer from loneliness. I think since the corona, we have discussed that very much. Before, it was not actually an issue. And I think we can discuss and we can actually plan our cities so that they are more inclusive, they are inviting, so the social spaces are inviting and creating belonging, but also ownership, which is actually also a mental health issue. So this is actually some of the basic ideas behind the work. And of course, we are linking to CGG goals, and we made a project in 2019 called City Wellbeing that actually turned down to future urban health culture. So it's an ambition to somehow to create a toolbox that can be applied to physical environments, but also before you actually are starting planning. So this is actually, you can actually map any neighborhood about how the working situation is, the educational system, how many smokers, etc., and then across these scales. But then we are mapping social needs, mental needs, physical needs, and it can be implemented in series of different scales and plans. And then, of course, we should ask ourselves, what is the meaning of mental needs? What are the influential parameters, and what are the effects? If we're just taking one, mental needs, you know, it's a question of being a part of something. So actually, it can be this discussion about safety. Safety in society is quite important, but it's also having an effect of sense of belonging. And I think this is both in campus areas where we are working, but also in cities. It's a part of the strategy that you actually all the time are talking about a holistic approach to how you actually plan a city. And this is just an example of some of these architects know what it means, but safety, mental breathing spaces, stimulation, etc. It's something that we sometimes forget when we plan a neighborhood. Is there a mental sense of, is there a sense of belonging? Do people actually feel they are included? Are they invited in to participate in social activities? We created a lot of cases and we discussed a lot of cases, and of course we couldn't go into that. But I think it's very much a part of the strategy. It goes from the strategic level to road networks, to paths, to individual streets, to building, to urban spaces. And some other one is, of course, it's a 20-minute city, reinventing Paris. London is a very good example. And especially London is quite nice because it's Gilead Square, where they have a lot of immigrants and a lot of cultures in specific spaces. But as Richard Sennett is saying, the more immigrants of different cultures you actually have in a society, in a specific space, you actually see a greater tolerance. So the way that we are planning areas with specific type of people is actually very bad for the belonging and the integration of and the creation of tolerance. I will just shortly go into superblocks, which I think is again a question which is relevant in Vilnius because it's a mobility study and it's an urban strategy that promotes well-being. And I think it's really important to connect these two elements so that we make sure that when we are doing a mobility study on mobility hubs, which we are working with, then we are also talking about how we actually can change the vision about quality of life for those who actually are using the mobility. You know, I think many of you know Sarah's plan from Barcelona, and then they did this mobility plan where they excluded the traffic from specific areas. And of course, you just move the traffic out. On the other hand, they also discussed, you know, a lot of temporary measures. So to get rid of the cars and also integrating trees and public spaces for people that are living there was the message that they actually communicated. So I think also where we are talking about the noise, you talk about air pollution, but also heat islands, which will be the future discussion in all cities. Trees are part of that, where you can actually promote another way of dealing with things, but also discussing how many square meters of green you have in a city. So all the time being aware of that it's not only the technical side of the message, but it's also the mental, it's also the social side of the planning process that actually give a society where we can live also in the next 10 years. So it's some of these, I think many of you will know it, and we took down, you know, active movement, mobility strategies, social interaction, reversible strategies. So we had some measures to the toolbox finally. And I think maybe just to make this short, I think they were really well after some time to communicate to people why they actually did this, because we see also in Copenhagen that very often you do a lot of temporary installations, but they forget to tell the people that it's actually for them they are doing it. They clean the air, they create, they demolish heat islands, and they create social spaces, and also they actually change the whole mentality within the area. But you have to communicate that it's for the better in the city. So we came out with these recommendations, and when I'm saying holistic, it's because it's communicating through mental, social, and physical needs. I think from the cases we invested, equality in health in Denmark, we have just had a new government, and equality is a very, very important issue because it's actually a question about accessibility to urban areas, accessibility to hospital, to dentists, etc., etc. Also, they discussed about quality of life, social neighborhoods, green areas. You have a lot of green areas, and it's very important that people from their window in their house actually can see a green area or green tree. And then I had a professor from active living in Odense, and he's actually dealing with a discussion about active living. It is about biking, it's about having easy access to other things than cars, individual cars, but also sharing and discussing other ways of exchanging between mobility examples. And then integrated research, I think, is important because there's a lot of our colleagues at universities that actually are dealing with research. So these equality in health, quality of life, social neighborhood, green areas, and so on, actually demonstrates a palette of things that we should remember to also to take the other part of the technical discussion about sustainability. And this is some of our own projects. It's parks and it's a housing area, and I'm coming into that Munkebjerg, better affordable housing. I think also equality in housing and choosing your house, your home, is rather important and will be for the next many years. And it's things that you can find in our website. So the reason why I'm taking this is that it's an example of an urban area where we've been working since 2012. It's a mixed neighborhood. It's housing, it's student, it's family, it's senior, it's a daycare, it's a fitness center, it's a senior house. And I think the mix of generations is all the time things that we have to address. We have to figure out that we're not actually talking about one group, but we are mixing the groups so that they can all feel that they are part of this neighborhood. Yeah, and we try to apply this methodology into this to try to check, did we actually succeed in applying both the mental, the social, and the physical? This is not a master plan, and actually I've always been very aggressive to master plans because you cannot decide 20 years ahead. You have to be aware of what type of society you are in, and then you change, and then you discuss, and maybe that the agendas in society will be totally different. We didn't know anything about the situation and the global situation we are in just now, 3 years ago. So this is the whole area, and it's also linked to Odense, which is Denmark's third biggest city. So applying these influential parameters is again a question of mental needs. Is it clear? Do you have an identity? Do you have belonging? And how do we do that? We actually concentrate the biggest park in the middle so that it's actually accessible for everyone. And there are streets and small pathways around in the area. And then applying these orientational buildings, proximity to green areas in terms of scale and variation. And also talking about that it's important that people, if they're living in the ground floor, that they can actually go out, participate in the public life, but also withdraw and just observe. And I think that possibility in the edge zones, even though it's a housing area, it's quite important. And the same with mental needs or social needs. I think we all think that we know everything about how social community explores the city, but also extend. But it's very much about overlapping functions. It's also a question of creating greenhouses, but also squares that are actually complementary to the big park. So there is a variety of areas and public areas that actually can invite various groups daily over time, so that it somehow complement the group of people living in the area. I think it's about 80,000 square meters, and I don't recall the number of people living there, but it's a group. It's a very varied group of people. Of course, because it's also very close to University of Odense, which is very attractive for a lot of technical studies. So, and of course, the recreational climate adaptation is a part of the sustainable discussion as well. So it's all the time a question of demonstrating and make people living in the area that the climate and the changes in climate also can be a way of learning. So we actually have something to discuss. How did they do it? Do we actually observe and experience that it's actually cleaner air, and do we actually sleep better in the nighttime. And then we have these community spaces on top of some of the places of the houses. This is for seniors, not because they are not supposed to be down in the park, but of course because it's a question of sometimes withdrawing from the public situation, but being comfortable in the space where you actually feel safe with other people of the same character. So everything should be possible so that you feel safe, but also you belong to the space and you clean your desk afterwards. So this is a part of the park where we have the greenhouses in between. We have a playing ground, and we have all these pathways, and also the edge zones that actually gives the possibility that if you are lonely or you are living alone, you have the possibility of just sitting outside saying hello to your neighbor. And I think that's a very classical thing. On the other hand, sometimes we don't see it in urban development. And then basically it's important that we actually evaluate the impact of what we do. This is just an example of how it can be worked out on a scale of 1 to 5 in a way to optimal use, etc. We work this out to discuss before social needs. What is the effect on, for instance, how can you read the site or the area, but also afterwards, how does that readability turn out when you actually measure it and you discuss with people that are living there, having their daily life and quality there. And when I'm saying all this, I think it's not only developers, it's not only municipalities, it's not only architects or businesses. I think it's our shared responsibility to think about that we're not planning for ourselves or for the development company, but we're actually planning for the people we are discussing with, who's going to inhabit our city. Thank you very much for listening, and you can get the publication on our website. Thank you very much.